Nelson Sakaguchi, a bank executive in one of the biggest banks in Brazil, Banco Nordeste, received a momentous call. Who was calling? The governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. He wanted to advance the country by building a world-class airport the country had never witnessed. The task would cost $242 million and Nelson would receive a $10 million commission for investing in the project if he would be interested. They eventually hold a meeting in London where Nelson meets the governor, the deputy governor, and the aviation minister in a cordial business atmosphere. They show him all of the business plans and discuss the entire blueprint of the project. Nelson is completely drawn in and they seal the partnership with a handshake. A life-changing opportunity for Nelson. He couldn't be happier with himself. But there was a problem. It was all false. This is the insane story of how one of the most intelligent criminals in history sold a fake airport. The compelling character behind this insane story is Emmanuel U.S.A, popularly called the Owell of Abagana. But much is not known of Emmanuel and his background. It's believed he was born between 1950 and 1955 in the city of Lagos, Nigeria. From an early age, he had high aspirations to escape the poverty of his environment, so it was a priority to be rich in life. As a child, he exhibited high acumen and intelligence beyond his age. And it was in the lucrative world of finance that Emmanuel saw his ticket for the wealth he envisioned. As a young man, he pursued a path in banking. He excelled and showed a remarkable ability to intelligently navigate the intricate world of finance. He understood that for him to reach the top, he had to embrace hard work, perseverance, and astuteness. He applied these in his job and soon climbed the corporate ladder of success to reach the exalted position of the director of Union Bank Nigeria. He was at this time doing exceedingly well for himself. He had escaped the poverty of his origin and was now a respected director of Union Bank. However, Emmanuel wasn't satisfied. His eyes were still on a higher goal. He wanted more money, the sort of money that would give him power and influence, that sort of money that would make him a man feared and respected at the same time. He began to make an extensive plan that would eventually engrave his name in the world financial records. Nigeria in the early 1990s was going through a major transformation and the new city of Abuja had been declared the new capital, igniting a flurry of intense economic development. Nigeria prioritized large-scale infrastructural development, with building a world-class international airport topping the list of projects. Emmanuel saw this as the ideal opportunity he had been waiting for. He came up with a terrific idea that would establish him in the Hall of Fame of con artists. He was going to sell a fake airport and milk investors millions of dollars. But to make this plan a reality, he wouldn't do it alone. He needed the assistance of other banking brains, so he formed a team. He personally selected 5 individuals: Emmanuel Afolu Obamosakwi, Nzeribi Akoli, Christian Ikechukwu Anajemba, and Amaka Anajemba, who were finance gurus and had the perfect connections that would make it easier to float the greatest heist of the century. The plan involved each of them impersonating the real high-ranking officials of Nigeria's financial sector. When every one of them had become well acquainted with their role and understood what was required, it was time to strike. The team began the project by meticulously sending detailed faxes to different banks across the world. And each of the faxes bore an official letter that claimed to be from a high Nigeria official named Turisha William, who supposedly is an officer from the Department of Financial Planning and Budgeting, Ministry of Aviation, an identity completely created by the team. The letter proclaimed Nigeria's plan to develop a major airport in Abuja, a city undergoing a heavy transformation since it was declared the new capital in 1991. After sending out the faxes, they waited patiently for the corporation that would fall for their sugar-coated lies. Time flew by and it was like no one was interested. But suddenly, they received a fax back from a man named Nelson Sakaguchi from Banco Nordeste, a notable bank in Brazil. Nelson told him that he was super interested in the proposal as his bank has been looking for a lucrative investment opportunity for a long time. As Emmanuel read the fax, he smiled and his team nodded in satisfaction. The plan was in full bloom now. Emmanuel immediately called Nelson. Though excited, he composed himself. knowing that to be more convincing he had to assume the personality of a top government official who had power and authority, someone who could also be trusted. He decided to impersonate the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Paul Aguma. This was long before the internet age, so it wasn't possible to just Google the internet and find out who the Nigeria Central Bank governor was. This was Emmanuel's perfect background for success. He charmed Nelson with his knowledge, fluency, and intelligence and told him not to worry about the legitimacy of the project as it was completely backed by the government. To maintain and protect the illusion, he told Nelson the project needed to be confidential and suggested they meet on a neutral ground, outside Nigeria and Brazil. They agreed on London. The stage is now set to advance the scam. The team began intense preparation for the meeting with each member of the team impersonating a high-ranking official. Emmanuel was the governor of Nigeria Central Bank, with the others becoming the deputy governor and the director of aviation. Their presentation was without flaw, showing detailed airport plans, extensive business proposals, and even fake documents to validate all of their claims. When they had tidied up every aspect, the team was now ready to fly to London. At this point, I would like you to hit the like button, subscribe so you won't miss any of our videos. Let's get back to this crazy story. Emmanuel and his team boarded a flight to London to meet with Nelson. To make Nelson trust them more and deepen his credibility of the project, they sent a limousine to pick him up from the airport and lodged him in a luxurious 5-star hotel, courtesy of the governor of Central Bank. At the beginning of the meeting, each member of the team introduced himself in accordance with the role he had been prepared for. Each of them showed a high level of charm, confidence, and intelligence. Emmanuel again emphasized they wished to keep the project completely confidential as construction would still take 4 to 5 years before commencing. At this point, Nelson assured him that whenever they were ready to start construction, that his bank would be ready to fund it. However, this angle didn't suit Emmanuel, and as one good with words, he promptly explained to him that they would need some funds immediately as they had a lot of planning which involved hiring companies and gathering materials and equipment, all of which required money to float and really get the project on its feet. Nelson became uncomfortable at this stage and began to have second thoughts. Emmanuel, quite sensitive, was able to realize his discomfort and quickly told him not to worry if he wasn't okay with the arrangements, that he already had several other heavy investors waiting, so the project will be executed notwithstanding. Nelson began to feel like he was going to miss out on a golden investment opportunity. He told him that even if he agreed, his bank management wouldn't approve. Emmanuel again told him not to be bothered, that he would just use other investors to get the project on, but he would give Nelson $10 million commission if he sorted the issue himself. That commission was the bait that finally hooked Nelson. He agreed on the deal, and they sealed the $242 million airport project with a handshake. Today, that money would be around $430 million. Emmanuel, proud of himself, convinced Nelson to make an immediate $3 million deposit as a proof of his commitment to the project. Nelson was now under their full control. Over the next 3 years, from 1995 to 1998, Nelson transferred a total of $191 million to Emmanuel and his cohort. To make sure they weren't traced, they used 17 banks in different countries of the world, with no one in those bank management ever suspecting any fraud and catching any trace of it. At this point, the team had congratulated themselves, but they must maintain focus and intelligence. They didn't spend their money on luxury cars, yachts, or mansions. They all invested their money in real estate in Nigeria and other parts of the world. They also bought shares in several companies. Emmanuel and the team regularly sent Nelson fake documents and contracts of different businesses they were acquiring for the airport in order not to raise any doubts. So far, so great. The team had successfully executed the biggest heist of the century uncaught. But their edifice of lies and deception was about to collapse. In 1998, Banco Noroeste was about to be acquired by one of the largest banks in Spain for a stunning $500 million. A man named Jaime Lopez, one of the directors of Banco Noroeste, was a key figure in the negotiation to help give all accurate information that would facilitate the sale. But he was terribly frustrated because there wasn't enough information on the whereabouts of a third of the bank's capital. It seemed to have disappeared into thin air, and all the pointers led him to one man who should have the answers. Nelson Sakaguchi. Nelson was ordered to appear before the board of directors to explain the movement of the money. Nelson was incoherent. He couldn't tell them anything substantial. Jamie was so infuriated that he grabbed Nelson by the collar and demanded the documents for the last 3 years of the bank's international operations. Nelson capitulated and said, "You know, I've always had gambling in my blood." And he went ahead and shared the details of the $242 million investment deal he had kept secret from all of them. The board was incensed, and the moment became the beginning of an international investigation into the third biggest banking fraud in history. The investigation led them to Nigeria, but Nigerian banks refused to join hands with them. The reason wasn't far-fetched. All those years, Emmanuel and team had kept bribing banks and officials secretly, so they gave their loyalty to the fraudsters. However, Nigerian banks had to finally cooperate after Western banks mounted extreme pressure on them. They revealed the identities of all the account holders, and Emmanuel and his team were laid bare for all to see. But at this time, Nigeria lacked financial fraud laws that would deal with such offenses. So Emmanuel and his team remained free birds. Meanwhile, Nelson wasn't finding it easy anymore. He was arrested at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport and charged with money laundering. He was sentenced to several years in prison. The owners of the Banco Noroeste, Simonson and Cochran, had to pay the $242 million bill in order to guarantee the sale of the bank to Santander, but they were furious at what Emmanuel, his team, and Nelson did. So they fought to recover some of their lost funds. But this was fruitless because most of the money was tied up in real estate investments. It was like all hope was lost for Banco Noroeste. However, a new president came to power in Nigeria in 1999 in the person of Olusegun Obasanjo, and 3 years later, in 2002, he established a financial crimes commission called EFCC. The new commission diligently pursued Emmanuel and his team, opening up a vast investigation on them. Subsequently, in 2004, Emmanuel and all of his team were arrested except one person, Christian Anajemba. Christian Anajemba and Amaka Anajemba were the husband and wife duo in the team. By the time the arrests took place, Christian was dead. He had died in a horrific car crash while investigation was going on. Emmanuel was being suspected of masterminding his death in a bid to stop him from running the team out. But it hasn't been proven. The trial commenced and they all pleaded not guilty. The Abjua High Court judge, Lawal Gumi, warned them against giving bribes to any court official after he alleged that money was already moving around. Indeed, Emmanuel and his team were able to bribe most of the jury and eventually the judge. Lawal said the crime was not committed in Abuja, hence, he lacked the jurisdiction to oversee the case. He ordered for the case to be transferred to Lagos High Court for trial continuation. On stepping out of the court, they were rearrested and the case was transferred to Lagos. Emmanuel once again tried to bribe the new officials and jury. In fact, he offered Nuhu Ribadu, the head of EFCC, the sum of $75,000 cash, but failed. He was further charged with the attempted bribery and the kidnap of a prosecution witness. But Emmanuel wasn't one to give up easily. He made a plan that would pave way for his escape. He arranged for an alarm to be set off in court during trial, claiming a bomb was about to explode in the courtroom. When this was applied, everyone took to their heels and the courtroom was evacuated. The trial was postponed and the courtroom searched for a bomb. Finding none, it was confirmed to be a false alarm. When Emmanuel saw his plan to escape had failed, he tried to negotiate a lenient sentence in exchange for the return of the stolen funds. He offered to return $10 million of the $242 million they had stolen. The officials told him he was a joker, that they wouldn't accept anything less than $80 million. Emmanuel was reluctant to agree to that much. Soon after, even that opportunity would be taken from him. What happened next? During the trial, they called a witness to the stand, and it was no other person than Nelson, his good old friend. Nelson gave the court details of how Emmanuel and his team impersonated high officials in their country and lured him into the fake deal. Emmanuel knew the game was over at this stage, so he agreed to pay $120 million of the stolen money, and the court ordered him to pay a $10 million fine to the Nigeria government. He was then sentenced to 25 years in jail. Did you believe Emmanuel would really be confined in Nigeria jail for 25 years? Well, I'm sure by now you must have known that he would certainly find a way to wriggle out of the sentence. He spent less than 2 years in jail and embarked on recovering some of his confiscated property through the law court, claiming that some of them were bought before the fraud. He was able to recover $52 million from his real estate properties. Emmanuel then decided to maintain a low profile and enjoy his ill-gotten wealth. However, fast forward to 2016, Emmanuel came under the law again, this time for a murder case. It so happened that about 200 persons attacked the members of a town called Ukpo, a neighbor of Abagana, which is Emmanuel's hometown, over a land crisis. 4 policemen were shot and Emmanuel Okafor, a security guard at a construction site, got killed in the process. The Anambra State Police Command alleged that Emmanuel was responsible for the mayhem, that he had sent the 200 people to go on the rampage, and consequently, he was arrested on 27 charges which included attempted murder, and terrorist attack. He was held at Awka Prison in Anambra State, but was later released on bail in December 2016. It will interest you to know that on February 25, 2021, Emmanuel Nwood, while testifying before Justice Mojisola Dada of the Ikeja Special Offenses Court, denied knowing the source of the $242 million that was paid into his account. His case on Banco Noroeste is still ongoing even after spending a few years of his 25-year sentence. But the fact is, Emmanuel is currently a free man, and until he completes his prison sentence, he cannot claim to have paid the right price for his fraudulent deeds that saw Banco Noroeste collapse in 2001. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and you can watch our other interesting videos. See you.